I would just recommend that we all take a view at this afternoon's work session, because especially germane to many of the comments that have been made by community members, we've discussed and I think had a really strong conversation as a governance team around the ways in which our policy and the subsequent implementation of the discipline code might need to be reviewed and revisited. Last month, I think, shared some really important reflection on just how adaptive our work inherently is as a governance team. And so I appreciate the concern, and I think I'll speak for myself. It's taken very seriously when I hear, particularly from students and parents, that there are some disciplinary concerns in our schools. And I think, easiest way to put it is that there's not an easy solution. And we recognize that there's an opportunity here, but there's also challenges that are specific to Gwinnett, and then there are also challenges that are global, and we're trying to do the best that we can with both of them. And so, I'm grateful for the opportunity to continue to work with this talented team and our talented staff to re-empower good decision-making and set our kids up for success. And so to the extent that we can continue to do that, I think we'll continue to find ways to be successful collaboratively. I was also really privileged to be able to begin the onboarding process with Dr. Simmons and have her wisdom and insight joining our board. And so committed to doing everything to make sure that that transition is as seamless as possible in the next 2 months, and continue to be grateful to serve. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Therese. Will I join Mr. Blair in urging each one of you, if you have an interest in watching the recording of our work session earlier today. It was a discussion of approximately 2 hours, and from each one of the 5 board members, a recollection and a reflection of how we came to establish the discipline code, the revisions to it, and what we might do as a board and as a community working with our community to see what we can do to make certain that the students who are in our school system are, number one, safe and secure, and secondly, that there are consequences for student behavior, and third, for teachers and principals whose work most directly is affected by removal of some of the tools of enhancing and enforcing discipline in the classroom, that their interests are not overlooked or dismissed. And so I urge you again to consider seeing what we saw and heard earlier this afternoon. From my own perspective as your school board member for District 3, I'd like to let you know that the conditions for my support of the discipline code, and I did vote for it, were that there would be a discussion that the superintendent would direct toward all teachers in our public school system to determine from their perspective how would the discipline code impact the work in their classrooms. Though I'm confident that the superintendent did mention this or work with the Teacher Advisory Council, my condition was that there would be of 12,500 teachers in our school system, and each would have an opportunity to respond. Also, another condition was that we would roll out the training of the discipline code and the components of it over a several-month period, August through December. And that did not happen. I voted yes with those as the conditions, and now I am at the point where I am very concerned about the negative impact of this without a report from the superintendent, I can infer this myself, that there is a great concern on the part of our teachers and principals, and that it's going to be a very, very difficult thing to continue unless we make accommodations and clarify with feedback from our teachers and principals how to make this thing work. And so I say to you, I am ready to rescind my support of the Discipline Code JCV number 1. And to Dr. Watts, I would request sincerely that you would help us have evidence that principals and teachers will be restored to their positions of authority and autonomy related to student discipline. Also, I've had great concern about the validity and the reliability of data that have come our way to determine whether or not the discipline code is reaching its objective. We had a very lengthy discussion today about whether or not student tardies and student absent without leave, AWOL, are included in this year's reporting of discipline or not. And we also had a robust discussion about which years should we compare. 2019, the last full year before COVID, 2020, 21, 2022. There's great need, and I'm hopeful that there's a great willingness on the part of Dr. Watts and his staff to provide us with the data crystal clear that we can determine and understand and have organized. I'm going to move now to two concerns that I have related to policies that we have already underway here in Gwinnett County Public Schools. And one, you heard a speaker just a little bit earlier speak about the programs that we have approved in 2021 for sexual health and sex education and AIDS education. What we find is that that policy has already been approved. And what we also find is that it is a policy where parents are allowed to and requested to opt out of that program before their students take the program if they want to. Well, Dr. Watts, I've asked you for an update and a clarification that there is a pilot program apparently underway now with the new Health Smart program, not the CHEAT program, and that parents whose children are in that program have not had the opportunity to opt out. In fact, their students are in the program without our following our own policy. And so, Dr. Watts, if you would, again, I request, give me information so that we may take back to our community, a conservative community that has approved the 2021 program for sexual health and AIDS, and that it has until 3 or 4 years from now before it expires. There should be plenty of time to follow our own policy. And finally, there's been a good bit of discussion, at least in the newspapers, that regards whether we should have metal detectors or scanners, or whether we should go in many other different directions. We do have a policy underway already. It doesn't have to be approved. It's a policy that requires, actually, the Board of Education to approve before the superintendent makes a purchase of $1 million or more. as to whether or not this is the thing that we might want to do. I commend Dr. Eric Thigpen for a report earlier today where he gave us a suggestion of 2 options, maybe 3. If we want to spend the money, it might be available. But it's very important that our school board and our community have an opportunity to discuss this before such a significant decision is made. And so I'd like to close my remarks by saying that I believe greatly in what I saw today myself, and that was a spirit of unity on the part of our Board of Education. Each one of us, 5 different members, working in the schools of our county, but many of us saying that we had seen the same thing. The problem that we've discussed, that I've just shared with you, highlights of it, and the desire to make certain that this is a robust communication between our community and our Board of Education. I want to thank you very much for the opportunity to share my thoughts with you. Over the months that have preceded, I've been formulating these thoughts. And tonight, I believe, in fairness to each one of you, you need to know where I stand. I thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Therese, and thank you, Dr. Watts. I very much appreciate the opportunity to make my comments.
Thank you, Chairperson.